good about things. But until the government accepts, you have to do whatever you can to get it fixed. So the only time that doesn't apply is if there are latent defects that exist if the item is accepted. So you give them a computer, they turn it on, everything seems to work, there's no visual problems with it, everything seems to be aligned, and then they start working with it for 6 months and all of a sudden they catch fire, right? You had no way of knowing that when you accepted it within the first couple days. That was a latent defect, something that through prolonged use caused the problem. So you would have had no way of knowing that, so that's considered a latent defect. Then you can expect reimbursement from the contractor. Or if the government determines fraud has been committed. So let's say, for example, they told you to provide the results of that destruction test. So you go out and drop it from 38,000 feet and see if it ends up okay. And you say, yes, I did, and here's the results, and this is what it looked like when it landed, and everything was fine. But in reality, you didn't really do that. So the government takes these computers, based on your information that you provided, that you dropped them from 38,000 feet and all was good, you go over to a war area, drop these computers at 38,000 feet, and guess what? They're all a bunch of smithereens. That's a case where even though they accepted them from you, it was clear that you did not perform that test because it didn't, that would be, so they know you've committed fraud. And then any gross mistake amounting to fraud is discovered. So, you know, maybe you didn't do it deliberately, but by God, you should have had at least one of your products tested all the way through to make sure that these problems didn't exist. Evidence of final inspection or acceptance, there has to be a receiving report, which is called a DD250, or some other form that's used for formal acceptance. So most agencies use this standard form called DD250 to accept your products or services. You also have to provide a copy of the invoice. If I send an invoice over to my customer and they sign off on it, then the government considers that acceptance, and they can use that. Or any kind of commercial bill of lading, where the transportation carrier is responsible to the contractor for any damage or loss, and the contractor in turn is responsible to the government. In this case, the CBL usually signifies that the government is responsible for reimbursing the contractor for the cost of freight charges. So those are the 3 forms of final inspection or acceptance. We just talked about that. Certificate of conformance. Sometimes the CO, contracting officer, can issue a certificate of conformance or COC, and it's typically used when items are delivered are of low dollar value or they're not very critical. And then by using the COC, the government reduces the cost of inspection, and the actual COC document serves as evidence that it's occurred, inspections occurred. So acceptance is on the basis of the contractor's COC, or it's in the government's best interest. Small losses would be incurred, this is when they can use it. And the contractor's past performance shows that past deliverables have typically been accepted. So if your product comes over and they don't accept it, they reject it. This rejection notice has to be furnished promptly so that the contractor, if the government recommends rejection due to nonconformance. In other words, they can't decide your product's non-conforming and wait 6 months to tell you, because you're going to be incurring costs and they can't let you do that. So they have to let you know right away. Notice is either written or delivered verbally and then followed with written confirmation with the following exceptions. If your stuff is, in other words, if they come to your facility and they tell you these things don't conform, they don't have to give you written notice because they've already told you at your facility. Or if the contractor persists in offering non-conforming supplies or services for acceptance, or the delivery or performance was late without an excusable delay. So if the contractor is ever late, you have to talk to them about why they were late and figure out whether it was an excusable delay or an inexcusable delay. It has to include the reason for the rejection, and written notice of rejection requires a written receipt from the contractor. So once the government gives you a rejection notice, you have to sign that you received the rejection notice, because that becomes part of the contract file saying that they've notified you of that information. Notice of rejection, it could have an impact on contractor's delivery schedule, and that's not the government's fault. So if I delivered a shipment today of 500 widgets and they were not compliant, and I'm supposed to deliver 500 more next week, and it's going to take me a while to retool my machine and go through the test prototypes, that's not the government's problem. I still have to get those produced next week on time. They're going to notice a rejection. The government should also be documenting what it's seen. So how many observations did they make at our work site? What actions did they take to let us know about our non-conformance? So basically, they have to document what they're doing to let us know that our stuff isn't being rejected. They also have to note the number and type of defects, why is it non-conforming, and what the impact of the defects are on the government's requirements. In case of pen, if it's written in block letters versus that, there's probably no impact to the government requirements. But if it's red ink and not green ink, it's going to be an issue. And then what are the actions taken by the contractor to correct these deficiencies? Okay, this is the last line. I did great, didn't you? Get psyched, get psyched. Reply, so we now, when we get the letter of rejection, we basically have to go back to them and say what it is that we're going to do. So in order to reply to that notice of rejection, we could submit a proposal to repair and correct the work. So this is exactly what we're going to do to fix these items. We could submit the proposal and provide a downward adjustment, price reduction to the government because we did give them non-acceptable products. Or we could state that we refuse to repair or correct the work, or to offer any consideration to the notice of rejection. What do you think that's going to prompt? Right. So there's going to be a problem if we say that. Now we might say something like that if there was some ambiguity in the requirements. Maybe you get a blueprint drawing and there's a smudge and you interpret it one way and they interpret it another way. That could be something that might be a cause for a disconnect. If the contractor submits a proposal, the government has to go through and evaluate the proposal and determine whether or not it provides advice concerning the safety and performance of the proposed items. So in other words, those non-conforming products, are they going to be okay? Or all the other ones that I accepted, are they still okay? They have to evaluate whether acceptance would be in the government's best interest after repair, or correction or price adjustments made. We have to provide supporting documentation for rejecting or accepting our proposal, and then attend any negotiations. So obviously the government takes this inspection and acceptance very seriously, and it's up to us to either ensure we have quality assurance measures in place at our own facilities, if it's commercial items, or if it's anything that's subject to inspection and acceptance by the government, that we have all our ducks in a row. Okay. Let's all get outside and run around the block a couple times, shall we?
Any ladies?
Is that
Any ladies?